really stop, quote unquote, shedding the virus. That is, they have a prolonged period of viral load shedding. And that could be one of such cases. But let me say that her discharge was predicated on a follow-up. She was asked to self-isolate, so it's a kind of supervised self-isolation. Because since she was on admission, she wasn't manifesting any symptoms to start with. And she wasn't going bad in any way. And also, she wasn't taking medications, which is not unusual. There are people, even without taking any medications, they will still recover. And of course, knowing fully well that there is no cure and no specific treatment for COVID-19. A patient with COVID-19 will rely largely on his or her immune response or system to overcome and overwhelm the virus. Whatever treatment that is given so far is only supportive. So that is the situation, and hoping that somehow, somewhere along the line, she will still be tested and she will return a negative test. It's also important to say that coronavirus, particularly as COVID-19, is still being studied. So every day you're having research work published. That is, we continue to rely on science, we rely on data, and we rely on evidence. And one of the latest findings is that there may be some viral particles still left in the patient's system, which will be picked up when the test is done. So she may have been one of such patients. I'm sure Dr. Chikwe and the national coordinator will probably talk more about this. But I think from my own end, that is the bit I can say. Nancy, I think, I'm not sure your question is really for me, but you're asking about what the situation in Kogi. Kogi, okay, it's meant for NCDC. Thank you very much for sparing me. Amaka, I'm not too sure your second question, is it about the strain of virus? You said? Okay, I just want to be sure. Right. Okay. Now, one of the things that we have not made too much noise about is what we are able to do within. I can confirm to you that from the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, working in collaboration with some other institutions here in the country, they have been able to establish that the strain we have here is the same as the strain in Wuhan when it was first discovered. So that has been established, and we know that. The genetic sequencing has been established to that effect. So it's that strain that we know for now. Your second question has to do with hazard allowance. You recall that when I first presented this issue, I did say that we had MOU signed on to by the officials of the Ministry of Health. I led the team from Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Labor and Employment. The National Salaries and Wages Commission. Then the NMA, the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, the nurses, Nigerian nurses and midwives, and then the medical laboratory scientists, and a whole lot of other bodies under JOHESU. Now, the decision as at that time was to try not to reinvent the wheel. That is, going by what was already in place by way of the hazard allowance, and which dated back to 1991. So the decision was to suspend that because it's scandalous, so to speak. To suspend that and then come up with a new rate to cover this period and also have some kind of inducement. In addition to other things that have been put in place, like the Employees Compensation Act, and of course the group life insurance as well. Now, along the line, there was need to harmonize all this and ensure that the names of those that will be covered will reflect on the IPPS platform so that payment can just be made directly. And I am aware that that negotiation is still on because of certain developments along the line. As we speak right now, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health is right at a meeting in this regard. And I do hope that before the end of the week, the final outcome will be made available, which we will let you know. Rachel Nan was asking that what are the other areas of research aside the medicinal plants that we know of or that we are working on at the moment with the traditional medical practitioners and herbal practitioners. Now, we're still working on drugs. Don't forget that even the chloroquine is still being worked on as we speak. It's important for us to make it clear that the WHO, as the world body that regulates issues that affect health, the WHO does not dictate to countries as to what to do. They only provide guidance and guidelines, not dictate. Because the reality is that each country is expected to look at those realities on ground and leave room for innovation, leave room for flexibility, and then leave room for adaptation as dictated by the realities on ground in each country. So, we're still looking at the issues of drugs. We're still looking at the issues of vaccine as well in the area of research. Oftentimes, what we get is that this is what is happening in America, this is what is happening in Britain, but we need to have our own figures based on science,